Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Los Angeles Rams Insider Podcast. I'm your host and beat writer, Brock Vieira. You can check out all of our work at www.si.com/NFL/Rams/on/SI, where we drop double digit pieces of content every single day. So, today's episode, we're going to be talking about Matthew Stafford, his MVP last season, how he can achieve back to back MVPs this season, and what does this mean for the Rams moving forward for the rest of free agency, the draft, and then, of course, the post draft veteran free agent market. So Matthew Stafford had an incredible season last year, and you could tell pretty early that something special was brewing. In the first couple of games, I didn't really see it. I had massive concerns about the Rams' entire operation. Were they still too reliant on Puka Nacua? Why are these red zone issues still prevalent? When will Devontae Adams come into play in a meaningful way? And then as the season went on, I would say around week 3 to week 4, I'm definitely more on that Colts game. So that was week 4, is when we really start to see everything sort of come together. Even though they had a great showing in week 3 against the Eagles, that of course fell apart because of a variety of issues that was not associated with their quarterback. Especially since the quarterback drove them right downfield to line up the game winner, and then they just we don't even get into it. In order for Matthew Stafford to have a repeat performance, which is not something that's, dare I say, uncommon, considering Aaron Rodgers in a McVay offense under Matt LaFleur won MVPs in 2020 and 2021, the framework is there. And the key piece is one, the offense, and two, Devontae Adams. Right, Adams is not the same player he was those years ago in Green Bay, but he just led the NFL in touchdown receptions and single-handedly solved the Rams' red zone issues. There's going to be three critical elements of improvement that the Rams are going to need to accomplish in order to have Stafford maintain those MVP standards. And first off, it's going to be finding a true third threat, whatever that means for them. In theory, because they run 11 personnel a lot, that's a third wide receiver. Whether that's a jump up from Konate Munfield or Jordan Whittington or Xavier Smith, perhaps bringing in another player as a receiver, they need a third guy. Or maybe Trent Ferguson can develop into that tweener guy who can play wide receiver and tight end. So maybe the Rams run more 12 personnel, but we'll see on that. We'll get into the personnel packages a bit later in this video. But in order for the Rams to be successful offensively, they need to have that third threat because teams are slowly starting to figure out how to shut down Adams and Nakua enough in order to win ball games. That third threat, even if they aren't effective, it opens up everything for everybody else. And that was the whole reason why the Rams paid Tutu Atwell $10 million to go jog every Sunday, is because he opened things up for everybody else. That method doesn't work anymore. And yes, you do need a speed guy to some extent, but in the modern NFL, everyone has speed, and unless you're Tyreek Hill in his prime, it's really not going to be game changing. It's all about more timing, precision, and of course, calling proper plays against and executing them against different coverages. You do wonder if Montfield was a bit more developed as a player, or if you go to my opinion, which is he's being utilized in a not proper way, could he have been in better position in the NFC Championship game to make that critical catch in the end zone? You never know. But these are the things that you have to think about as you enter this season so that you can avoid those mistakes moving forward. I think Montfield is a very talented player. I think he does a lot of things well. And I think that he also hasn't had the opportunity to do those things because he's primarily played on the outside. And while he can play on the outside, I don't really see him as a primarily outside receiver. I see him more as an inside outside guy, depending on the rest of the personnel package. I also think that if you were to put Mumfield in motion a lot more, you could create a lot of different unique opportunities for yourself that's going to help sustain Stafford's process, or I'm sorry, production. The critical factor to all that working is Stafford and Sean McVay having a willingness to go away from the norm. We all know Stafford is the type of player who's going to, pardon me, gun down one wide receiver or two at best. He did it with Cooper Cup. He did it with Calvin Johnson. It's just who he is as a quarterback. And hey, can you blame him when you look at the effectiveness of those results? But there's going to be times and elements, especially on third down, where you're going to need a threat that the other team does not or is unable to dedicate proper resources on a continuous basis to stop. I think that can be Mumfield. I think a name we should also watch out for is Jawan Jennings because of that scenario. So that's going to be the key, that first key. The second key is going to be mixing up those personnel packages, as I mentioned. Matthew Stafford was at his most efficient when he was running a heavy dose of 13, when the Rams were running a heavy dose of 13 personnel with, of course, Tyler Higbee, Colby Parkinson, Davis Allen, and Terrence Ferguson operating the rotation. 13 personnel means three tight ends are on the field at any time. And because of the way that NFL defenses have built themselves in order to counter McVay's offense that he was initiating in the 2010s, there's a lot of tweener players, dime backers, hybrid linebackers, star players that are like safeties that play slot corner. Um, Basically, a ton of Quentin Lakes is the best way to put it out there. Derwin James, Nick Imawari, lots of players that fit that role, which is great if you're defending against 11 personnel. But now that you're going against 13, well, all your dime backers are not linebackers, and all your hybrid guys are not linebackers. So you're already going to have the physical mismatch about against going against tight ends. And then if a team tries to substitute to go with a more linebacker heavy um, unit, of course, the Rams are going to have the advantage in terms of route running, matchups, and so on. But then when the teams are going to stick with the dime backers and hybrid linebackers and slot corners, you're going to have that physical element that's going to allow you to run the ball a lot more and more effectively, which of course opens up everything off play action. So no matter what, it's a win-win scenario for the Rams. I would like to see further investment into the 13 personnel package. I want to see more of Terrence Ferguson on the field. I think the more you play Ferguson, the more experience he gets, and the more he's going to be ready to take over for 11 personnel from Colby Parkinson after this season, because that's where I think the Rams are trying to go with Ferguson. Regardless, the improvement and development of the 13 personnel package will allow Stafford to remain efficient. And when he had his full accompaniment of tight ends and the package during the regular season before Tyler Higbee got hurt, I think he had like no interceptions, like 13 touchdowns. It was something ridiculous in like 4 games. So, you know, the numbers speak for itself. And then the third element, I think is the most crucial, is going to be running the ball a lot more. Devontae Adams is a great player, and he will be a Hall of Famer one day. He's also an older guy who is coming off a hamstring injury, who was unable to finish out the regular season. Even though he wanted to play, the Rams more wanted to keep him on ice for the playoffs. But that was one of many moves that prevented them from winning the division and maintaining the number one seed, something that they were able to grab, um, you know, in the middle of the season towards the end. Of course, they lost it to Seattle. Seattle won the division. They got the number one seed, and they ended up winning the Super Bowl. There's reasons for this thing, for that. So therefore, you want to take off the wear and tear from Devontae Adams, and there's not really this 1,000 yard streak to keep up anymore because he only had like 700 something yards last season because of those injuries. So of course he wants to be at the best, but he also wants to win a Super Bowl. 0-5 in NFC Championship games. That's tough to swallow. And then Puka Nakua, he's going to give you everything that he's got, and it's going to be a great production. But at the same time, you can only go to him so many times. Therefore, by mixing things up and not always having those guys on the field, it keeps them fresh so that they can be much more effective in those critical moments. So those elements are very crucial to Stafford becoming MVP. But this is the key, and if the Rams fail to execute this, I struggle to see how he can maintain these standards. And that is tremendous investment into their offensive line. They already have their starting five, and there's no doubt about it that those guys are going to be the starting five come week one, barring injury. But that's the key word: injury. Both Steve Avila and Kevin Dotson were unable to play the entire season last year. They both missed multiple games, which meant Justin Dedich went in for both of them. Well, what about the scenario in which they both go out? Are you comfortable with Bo Limmer, who we all know is not a good pass blocker, at least from what we've seen over the past 2 years, going in for one of those guard positions and Dedich going for the other? I think that this is the type of year where you need to go out and you need to get a true, legitimate swing tackle as a backup to supplement David Questenberry, because Warren McClendon isn't that guy anymore. He's a starter now for the retired Rob Havenstein. Then you also need to go and get a guard in case you hit that scenario in which multiple guys go out because at least we know Bo Limmer can still play center, and a center's best friend is a guard that can help on double teams. So those are the elements that are going to allow the Rams to maintain their standards, give Stafford the best opportunity to go and get a second MVP. And if they can do that, I think that they should win the Super Bowl in 2026. Of course, being played at SoFi Stadium. This has been Brock Vieira for the Los Angeles Rams Insider Podcast. We'll catch y'all next time. Take care.